Hi all, welcome back to the Congressional App Challenge Debugged podcast. I'm your host Mehta, but today I will not be your host. I'll be passing it over to a wonderful member of the Congressional App Challenge Debugged podcast team, Tushar. Tushar, I'll pass it to you to introduce yourself and introduce our guest.
Hi, my name is Tushar Mehta. Thank you, Mehta, for introducing me. And our special guest joining us today is Jenny Buccos. Jenny is a multi-award winning director and producer. She is the founder and CEO of EXPLR, which is a multimedia education strategist and an agent for global citizenship. In 2003, before the existence of YouTube, she founded Project Explorer, which was a free multimedia website designed to educate K through 12 students about global issues, world cultures, and histories. And Jenny is the three-time recipient of the Gold Parents' Choice Award for excellence in educational programming, and she's a 2010 recipient of the National Award for Citizen Diplomacy. Jenny, thank you so much for joining us today. How's it going?
Great, Tushar. Thanks so much for that intro. It's a little embarrassing sometimes to hear those accolades.
Yeah, all those achievements definitely amaze me. One day when I grow up, I definitely want to go. I'm inspired to be just as amazing as you are. So getting into our interview here, starting off with our first question, can you kind of explain your journey and what inspired you to focus on global education and digital storytelling at such an early age?
So I have a very unusual journey. I studied theater in school. I studied Shakespeare. I thought I wanted to be an actor, and I moved to New York. And I went to one open audition. Open auditions are like when anybody can come in and audition for a role. And there were literally hundreds of people for one role. And I knew that was not going to be my life, that I didn't have the talent, but I had the passion for performance and storytelling and sharing other people's stories. So I did what a lot of people who are in acting do to make ends meet. You either wait tables at a restaurant or you go become a temp at a major corporation. So I took the path of becoming a temp at an investment bank. And within the first week of being there, the gentleman I was working with was a C-level executive. He was actually the CEO. And he said, "You're pretty smart. Would you like a job?" And I was thinking, this is not what I want to do. However, I have all these college loans I need to pay off. I'm absolutely going to take the full-time job where I know I have security and I can start paying down my student loans. Very common thing. After about 6 months, they said, "Do you want to go work in Hong Kong and Tokyo?" And I was 23 at the time, and I had never been out of the country. And they got me a passport, and they dropped me in Hong Kong and Tokyo, and it completely changed my life. And I thought how different my education would have been if I had been surrounded by people who spoke different languages, had a different lived experience, had a different background. And when I came back, I thought, I want to give this to as many young people as possible, this opportunity. I grew up in a town of 800 people. So I was just not exposed to the world beyond my community. So I thought, Travel Channel exists. I like to travel. I have a passport now. I can buy a camera and I can teach myself how to do all of this. And then I can probably teach myself how to code and make a website to share that information. So this is before YouTube even existed. So that's my unusual pathway to getting into education and really learning how to be a filmmaker and how to code and how to build a website.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I obviously when you take on the path of education, there's so many ways you can go. Starting with you can be a math teacher, you can teach English, you can teach coding. How do you know coding was what was right with you, or what was right for you, I should say?
I didn't know that coding was right for me, but I didn't have a budget to build a business. So I just had to figure it out as I went along. And it's not like it is today. It's not like you can pop things in Chat GPT and say, "Fix my code for me," or "How do I code this line?" Or I couldn't watch a YouTube video to teach me. But they did have the For Dummies book. So I would buy the For Dummies book and figure it out. And right around that time, I also figured out that you could view source. So if I would go on a website and say, "I like how this works," and this is not complex things that I was doing. It was basic in HTML. But I could figure it out and I could sort of work backwards from what a website did to get to that point. So I was using software, it was called Dreamweaver at the time, but you still had to be able to set up, CSS to get it to look the way you wanted. So it's a skill I really just taught myself. I figured it's like a puzzle. If I can crack it, then I can just make it work. And if I got stuck, I would ask somebody who did it for a living.
Yeah, that's amazing. I know you mentioned how technology is definitely evolving today with obviously the introduction of ChatGPT and other AI models that are present to kids my age and also adults. So is there any emerging fields or skills that you think students participating in both the Congressional App Challenge and the National STEM Challenge should focus on to remain competitive and innovative?
Yeah, I'm going to say the skill sets that I think are most important may not be rooted in technology. The ability to collaborate with different people, I think, is like hugely important, especially if you're trying to, if you're working on the Congressional App Challenge, oftentimes you're working with a team. So being able to collaborate. I also think project management skills, which I know is going to be like, oh, so boring, but it helps you like stay on time, assess risk. If something goes wrong, what's the next pathway? And then I just think like basic coding is like really, really important. When people ask me if I speak a second language, I say I don't speak a second world language, but I do know how to code. And I almost think that is like a universal language. And I wish I knew things that were more advanced than like HTML. But I do think that's a universal language. And I think people should recognize it as that.
Yeah, for sure. You think collaboration has definitely been one of the main uh, reasons why you got to where you are today?
100%. I could not have started two companies and run the National STEM Festival without being able to collaborate, being able to communicate. If somebody's frustrated, like how do you work that out? And also if you're trying to pull off like a big national thing, or you really want to engage not hundreds of people, but tens of thousands of people, you have to be able to collaborate with people because you're just one person.
Yeah. Do you have any like partnerships or collaborations that are like the most memorable moments for you in particular? Like obviously the National STEM Challenge is definitely going to be up there. And is there anything else throughout your career that has that magnitude?
Yeah. I worked about 10 years ago with the BBC. So you mentioned I'm a director producer. The
Yeah.
BBC is one of my favorite news outlets, and they're global. So wherever you go in the world, you can always listen to the radio or television. And I got to do a day on the job with a journalist at the BBC, and I just thought that was like the coolest partnership to go there. I've worked with a lot of like really cool museums, and technology and education has taken me behind the scenes to create sort of like virtual field trips for people. And then I'm really excited about the Congressional App Challenge for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. So for talking about both the National STEM Challenge and the Congressional App Challenge, what do you think that both these events can give what kind of opportunities do you think they can give to both middle school and high school students looking to participate in these challenges?
I think there are a lot of opportunities that these two can give young people. One, just the idea of like starting something and seeing it through to being finished, whether you are recognized as the winner or you just completed. I think that's really important. Like to start something, have an idea, iterate, and be okay if you fail, because failure is when we learn. It's good for us. I also think if you do have the opportunity to do House of Code or come to DC, that opens up just a world of possibilities in building your network. And I know to me, that's like a dirty word sometimes, like the way we use it, but think of it as like building your community. So we talked about collaboration. You never know who you meet at these events. You may work with, you may support, they may support you later on in life. So I think that those opportunities are really important. And then I think the Congressional App Challenge and the National STEM Festival convening in DC and having the opportunity to have FaceTime with your elected representatives gives young people a literal voice and seat at the table. And when a third of the population is under 30 years old on the whole globe, it's like 2.2 billion people are under 30 years old. Having a literal voice and seat at the table with decision makers and with elected officials is like the most valuable thing you could get out of either one of these.
Yeah, absolutely. As as a national STEM champion, I can definitely agree. I remember sitting at those round tables with all of my fellow winners and having all those influential conversations that definitely got my mind working about all the different things that can be done to make our world a better place, and definitely gets me excited on what contributions can be made. So kind of diverting the conversation a little bit, in your opinion, how can partnerships like the one between the National STEM Festival and the Congressional App Challenge leverage digital platforms to give students broader access to resources and mentorship?
I think having access to digital platforms, look, in our pockets on our mobile devices, we carry access to all of the world's knowledge. And it's just how do we choose to use those devices and that knowledge and our time? So I think it's critically important, for like House of Code, not every person who applies can come to DC. With the National Challenge last year, we had 2,500 signups. We can't bring 2,500 people to DC, but we can take STEM and meet people where they're at to take them to where we need them to be. So I think digital learning opportunities, the opportunities to build your community through these things in an online setting is one of the most powerful things we can do to help drive STEM literacy and STEM understanding.
Yeah, for sure. And then kind of ending things off here, for those who are looking into starting a brand new project from scratch, do you have any words of advice for both the Congressional App Challenge and the National STEM Challenge? How to just get initially started with the project and how to come up with certain ideas that can have a global impact?
Don't think about it as a global impact. Look around your community, look around the people in your life, and see what challenges they face every day and try to solve that. And if you solve it for one person, like that's doing extraordinary work. A lot of times solving for one person also means it can scale up. So find something you're passionate about, find something that is personally meaningful to you, because that will help you through the frustrations, the failures, the getting back up on your feet. If it's personal, it just makes it so much easier.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Yeah. Kind of relating that back to my projects, I kind of understand that. The project that I went with was tackling the problem of recycling, and as much as that is a global problem, that does affect my community, and that is where it all starts off from. So I can definitely see where you come from that. Yeah.
And I love that you had that as a project, because during COVID, when I saw people's used masks on the street, it takes 450 years for those masks to break down, and they don't ever break down. And it was like a little video game. Every time I saw them, I would just see like 450, 450, 450 pop up. So I love that you tackled that, because I think it's something we can all relate to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tushar, and for hosting, and Jenny for answering all of these questions. I know that it was so helpful to hear a little bit about your background and how you went from Shakespeare to investment banking to now the National STEM Festival. It's absolutely incredible. And to our listeners, thank you so much for listening. Really appreciate you taking the time to listen, and we'll catch you next week for a new episode. Bye all.